Another episode of Rendezvous with Anza Saqib on CxO Global Forum. CxO Global Forum is a knowledge sharing platform for all C-levels across Pakistan and the globe. We take massive pride in contributing to the knowledge economy. Every time we've got some very special guests with us who are not only domain experts but thought leaders and have spent a considerable amount of time in the domain they belong to. And they are the movers and shakers, they are the influencers, and they are the global disruptors. Today as well, we've got someone who is an institution in himself. Please welcome Mr. Engineer Mansoor Malik. He's the chairman, Kamyab Pakistan, and co-founder, Pakistan Aerospace Council. Sir, how are you today?
Fine, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Mansoor Saab, your profile is known to many people, and it's no hidden truth. It's everyone knows who you are, what you've done, what you've achieved. But I would like to know where your journey started, where you grew up, which courses you studied, how did you end up where you are at right now, mashallah.
Well, I'm a Lahori. We call ourselves a Pakka Lahori. So Government College Lahore, did my college, went to UET Engineering University Lahore. My lifetime changed in 1970 when the graduating engineers, tore off their degrees and they were asking for jobs rather than degrees. So that was my last day in UET Lahore. I had spent 2 years, so I left it, and I wanted then to do aeronautical engineering. People had landed on the moon. Apollo 1 was there, so I was inspired. So I joined Air Force. The only aeronautical engineering college in the country was in PAeC. It was established in 1965. So I joined there, had a very nice 4 years of aeronautical engineering graduation, won the Sword of Honor of my course, graduated as the senior most cadet, and never looked back. I can divide my life into last 50 years. From 1974 to 2000, we were right at the right time, at the right space in building up the aerospace and defense industry of our country. And mind you, right now it's more than $20 billion in value. So that was a time, that we were developing, evolving. Pakistan Aeronautical Complex, Pakistan Engineering Council, Precision Engineering, AWC, Advanced Engineering Research Organization, Camera Avionics and Rebuild Factories. All these things which then ended up into what we call our strategic, systems. I don't know to talk there, but primarily I spent lifetime not only setting up our own industries, spent some time in European aerospace defense industry, in American aerospace defense industry, in various projects, and came back to the country to build up our own. So that is one aspect of my life, the first 25 years. Then when I became the head of the only aeronautical engineering college, and the only college which started American semester education way back in 1965, which is the College of Aeronautical Engineering, I was heading that institute in 2000. So I looked back and I said, well, we've spent so much of money, taxpayers' money, in building up an aerospace and defense industry, state of the art. Now let's talk about commercial discipline over military discipline, which meant how can we set up an aerospace and defense industry in the private sector. So what we did was we had under my leadership, way in 2000, we had an international aeronautical conference. We invited our CAE graduates, we call them, College of Aeronautical Engineering. Some of them were working in European Space Agency, others in NASA and in the private sector abroad. So we tried to build up an aerospace incubation center at the College of Aeronautical Engineering. And I'm talking about 2001. So that's how my journey starts in terms of commercial discipline overlapping military discipline to build up a private sector. So as you go along.
Absolutely. But Mansoor Saab, what a lot of people also are very proud of, and this is something that I know in particular, is that you've also contributed heavily to the startup culture in Pakistan and the development of it. Would you like to elaborate on that journey as well?
Yes, so like I was talking, we set up the Aerospace Business Incubator, which is a very challenging field at the College of Aeronautical Engineering, and CAE was part of NUST. So the rector NUST got this clue, and he said, "What the hell are you doing in Risalpur? Why don't you come and set up the NUST new campus in Islamabad, and let's have the first national technology incubation center?" So my journey in the Air Force almost came to an end from 1974 to 2002. And here I walked into one of a dream project of setting up a new university in 21st century in Islamabad by the name of NUST. So the first thing I did was I requested the rector to let throw out the optics of NUST, those swords and shields of the 18th, 19th century British Army.
The coat of arms, right.
We designed a new logo for the new optics of NUST in Islamabad, and we set up the country's first technology incubation center, and we started the first 20 startups way back into 2002-03 at Islamabad.
Right, absolutely. Mansoor Sahab, mashallah, you've seen quite an evolution of the whole industry in Pakistan in particular. So what I would like to ask you in particular, starting with the fact is that since you've seen both the industry and the academia side of things, we know that industry academia linkages is a buzzword, and you've spearheaded a lot of projects like that. So what exactly does industry academia linkages mean, and what all does it entail, and where are we lacking as a nation?
I had no problem when I took over the College of Aeronautical Engineering. You would be shocked if I tell you, way back in 1965, we had an industrial engineering department set up in College of Aeronautical Engineering in 1965. So the first thing I did was the other three department heads, I gave them less time, and I brought in my head of the industrial engineering department. I said, you get out of the class, get out of CAE, you have to spend more time in the industry. Bring the industry in, invite them over to academia, whatever it, cajole them, attract them. So that's what we did. Then we did the 9th International Aeronautical Conference. We invited more than 20 leading Pakistani industrialists, and we had a separate session, panel discussion on exactly what we're talking about today, university-industry linkage. And those were the people who actually started off our aerospace, business incubator. And those are some of them landed with me when I set up the Technology Incubation Center at NUST. So that's how our journey in the university industry linkage starts. It's not a buzzword anymore. And now we have to invite, we have to, I've been an R&D manager myself throughout my life, my first 25 years. When I came to the academia, even the language was not common. How do you speak your language with the industrialists? You have to have a common communication, with them. So that's how we broke a lot of barriers. And mashallah, now, a lot of things are happening, but the progress is still slow. I would love to have seen a much better, robust aerospace and defense industry in Pakistan. And that's why, I've taken the gauntlet of setting up the Pakistan Aerospace Council. We've got 3 clusters, industrial clusters in Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, and we want to have a seamless interaction between them and the universities.
Right. So when we talk about these collaborations with the universities, which 3 are the main components that you believe we need to have in order to ensure a successful industry-academia partnership?
The first thing which hit you when you go to universities abroad, you talk to professors and you are surprised that some of the professors have spent years in the industry. So they bring in the industrial know-how into academia. Yeah. We work, in sort of tunnels. So the first and foremost is that maybe to start with, 10 or 15% of the faculty should volunteer or should be attracted from the industry. Let them come into
Absolutely.
industrialists. They do come in the evening classes, some of them in certain universities, but we need to have a proper policy. So first thing is bring in the industrial culture into the academia. We are going to Park Austria for Schule next week. I'm taking my 30, 40 industrial partners that part of the Pakistan Aerospace Council. There are 70,000 square feet of special technology zone being developed at the Park Austria University in Haripur. And we want to have a foothold of these 30, 40 industrialists right in the university itself, so that, to start with, this interaction takes place.
Exactly, but that's very true, and we at CxO Global have been working on this particular area in terms of industry academia linkage, because what we're doing is we're connecting a lot of industry professionals and domain experts with the students, because what they study in books is something completely different from what they can learn from industry professionals and their experience. The second thing that I would like to ask you, sir, is that when we talk about startups in Pakistan, do you think we are at par with the world?
Yes, of course we are. But our growth, I call it, I'm the pioneer in this field, so I can now sit back and define new terms, in fact, in terms of startups in Pakistan. I call them horizontal startups. We started the first 10 startups way back in 2002-3. I brought TiE Chapter from Silicon Valley to Islamabad. I set up the TiE Chapter in 2007-8. I'm the founding, charter member. So we've helped launch more than 6,000 startups all over the country, 6 big cities and Gilgit-Baltistan. But all those startups are horizontal startups. Now, horizontal means, you have $500,000, $250,000, $1 million. At best we have one which is a $10 million startup. So I call them horizontal startups. Now we are maturing into perhaps vertical startups. So there is a difference. We mix up, and I'm very akin to pointing it out. SMEs and startups are different. SMEs you can predict. 10 years from now or 5 years from now, what will be the growth? But a startup growth is unpredictable, and to make it unpredictable, you require new concepts, new knowledge, and you require funding. So now Pakistan is ripe for angel fund to start with next 2 or 3 years, and then we take off into the venture capital world. So I would say, to answer your question, we are about 5 or 6 years away from the vertical growth. We call it acceleration phase of startups in Pakistan.
Acceleration phase of startups in Pakistan, right? Absolutely. Mansoor Saab, do you think any of our industry experts or the giants in Pakistan would qualify as VCs or angel investors? And is there a way?
No, I don't think so. Because the foremost thing is that, are they prepared to write off few $1 million or not? Sorry, they can't. So most of the industrialists, I'm sorry to say, they are from bank loans, and they're very tight on their financials. So
Especially post-pandemic.
So we require a whole sort of new mindset of venture capitalists and angel funds. I would say some of the industrialists, philanthropists, they can fill in the gap of angel funding. Yes, that is there. But angel fund can only take you, let's say, from $1 million company to a $5 or $10 million company. If you want to go from a $10 million to a $100 million, we call it Marcor, $100 million worth, or we call it unicorn, $1 billion worth of company. Then you require venture capitalists. And venture capitalist, is a totally different breed. I have been to the venture capitalists, on Sandhill Road, Stanford. I've met them. Some Pakistani, Americans in the form of Asad Jamal. He made his billions of dollars in buying of Skype. He
Right,
bought Sky for
absolutely.
$1.5 million and sold Sky for $4.8 billion. So that's what we're talking about. The venture capitalists are akin to take risks and write off few $1 million. If our people are in that mindset, fine. But I think we need to develop a venture capital mindset. We're still 3 to 4 years away.
So you spoke about the venture capitalists and angel investors, but what about the other side that needs to be groomed in terms of our startup? Do you think if some investors from the West are going to be entering the Pakistani market, do you think our startups are groomed enough? Do you think their pitch, their business plans are as mature?
Yes, one has to look back and see the business model of our social entrepreneurship model of Kamyab Pakistan. When I was
Okay.
leaving NUST, DG NUST, we drew this concept of Kamyab Pakistan, which meant a vertical, integration of startups. Right from the base of the pyramid to the center, and then to the top. The top is the Pakistan Aerospace Council. We forget to evaluate that. We talk about IT telecom would take us from here to, let's say, 5 or 6 or $10 billion in next 5-10 years. But an aerospace and defense industry is a $2 trillion annual revenue industry. Now look at that. So we're talking about now high technology. We're talking about medium level. Medium level, we've already influenced through TiE Islamabad. Last 14 years, when I was there at the helm of affairs in TiE Islamabad, we helped launch more than 6,000 startups. So we have
Right.
met that angel fund and that start of venture capital. Now we're looking at high tech, venture
Right.
capital, and also looking at the base of the pyramid. So that's the model
Right.
of
So
Kamyab.
when we talk about social entrepreneurship, sir, would you like to elaborate on what exactly social entrepreneurship is for the benefit of our audience?
Okay, I think that's a very
In
good
simple
question
terms.
because, yeah, we spent last 3 years building up the financial, the legal, the whole structure of social entrepreneurship in Pakistan. And when I say we, it was Kamyab Pakistan, it was SDPI, led by Dr. Wakar, his group, and British Council. So we have made a whole blueprint for social entrepreneurship in Pakistan. Right now, we are still stuck up to the old British 1860 Act of Societies Act or SECP Section 42 company, which means either you have a bowl in your hand and you're always begging as an NGO, or you have a not-for-profit company registered under SECP. The social
Right.
entrepreneurship is a totally different model that we've given, and that is that you don't take the money out, but you recycle the money. So we would like to have the micro entrepreneurs, built up that know-how so that you convert from a micro entrepreneur to convert into a social entrepreneurship startups. That's a
Right.
totally challenging field. A micro entrepreneur and startup, there's a big gap between the two. And that can be met through social entrepreneurship framework that we've developed.
Oh, okay. So, no, that sounds absolutely lovely, and thank you for sharing these ideas with us. Mansoor Sahib, on a personal note, mashallah, you've seen a lot of successes, but have you seen any failures in life, and what have they taught you?
Of course, the first failure was that I think our aerospace incubation center that we started in Risalpur, because of its remoteness, we couldn't attract more than 4 or 5 industrial partners. And then it was within I call it the military discipline. So I was trying to impinge the commercial discipline on the military discipline because Risalpur is an Air Force academy. So I learned that, and it took me another 2 years to evolve the commercial discipline. And that's what I negotiated with Director NUST, that if I have to set up a technology incubation center in NUST, so the military gets a back seat and the commercial discipline gets a forward seat, because I was bitten once because of the military requirements in the Risalpur. So yes, because by now we would have had a very viable commercially viable aerospace defense industry if we had started in 2000, 2001, because, we've spent so much of taxpayers' money building up a very large infrastructure in the public sector. And I was also responsible from that side. So my entire focus was now, how do we evolve a growing private sector and get them involved into the aerospace. So yeah, there was a little hiccup, but it took me 2 or 3 years to recover and then apply whatever I wanted, that I mentioned in the early part of my talk about commercial discipline, overriding military discipline to achieve high technologies in the private sector.
Right, absolutely. Mansoor Saab, thank you for sharing all those details about yourself. Unfortunately, we are trying to, we've come towards the end of the session. So I just am going to have time for another 2 questions. First one being, the Prime Minister has recently announced the Special Technology Zones Authority. We did a session on it as well with the Chairman, STZA, Mr. Amir Hashmi. Do you think that setting up of this committee, this Special Technology Zones Authority, is going to produce a more conducive environment for new businesses to set up?
In fact, I know Muiz Yusuf because, he did his PhD with my cousin, Dr. Adil Najam. So I've met him in Boston also, and he's come back and he's brought I call it a breath of fresh air. So I'm meeting him, I think, within a day or 2, and we're looking at the national strategic, sort of technology, overarching, because right now we have to have a vision first. We've had enough of short-term, sort of projects and thinking a long-term will come. It never happens, So we need to have a long-term vision. What do you want to do in which technologies? I mean, we talk about, off the cuff, artificial intelligence. We talk about 4th industrial revolution. All of them are part of the aerospace and defense industry. So how do you take the first step? We don't want to only talk about it. So we need to have an action plan, an annual action plan, a feedback on that, where we are. So yes, I'm prepared to spend my next 5 years, but I'm not prepared to sit with public sector and only do paper pushing. That's what I'm telling people.
And I think you rightly pointed out that we really need to have that kind of collaboration between the public and private sector, and the private sector in particular. And that leads me to my last question. A lot of times when we talk about defense production or aerospace, it's mostly linked with the public sector programs. What do you think is the commercial potential of such programs? So
I've done my master's in this field,
Okay. So in a place like Pakistan, so what is the potential?
From the Pakistan point of view, dual use technology, last 50 years or so, you're using internet. Where did internet come from? From DARPA. You're talking about mobile phone. Where did it come from? So yeah, that's what we want to build up, myself and the young minds like I don't want to work with older people. I'm an old man myself, but I want to now work with young people who are open-minded. Let's look at where we can do. So we need to have private sector. I was the chairman ICT for D committee in 2010. And, I wrote the report. We had volunteers working with me. That report kept on, in the 2012 to 2019, 18. Whereas Yusuf came over and opened up the books. And then we had these NICs and these national incubation centers. We had, proposed that 8 or 10 years back. So I don't want the public sector to lay back and, we don't have time. We need to apply ourselves now. And we need to have private sector-led, initiatives.
Sir, we've got a question from one of the audience members, and Mr. Ahmed Hayat asks, is there any plan in the pipeline for Pakistan to join the space race? And then what is the viability of the current ICBMs in Pakistan for use as a propulsion system for launching LEO satellites?
I can tell him this much, that in 2000, our international conference helped launch PAeC-1. Otherwise, we were gone. We were a goner, because from 1970, we had we had booked 5 slots in space. We have lost 4 slots. And when the last slot was left, I invited people like Dr. Atta to Risalpur. I invited people like A.Q. Khan Saab. I invited people like Dr. Ishwaq, who was chairman of Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission. I begged them that don't let the last slot also go away. And yes, so we occupied that the first and the last slot. If you want more slots in space, the waiting time is 20 years. If we had missed that opportunity in 2000, we would be sitting even today, not even having a single slot. So let's call, a spade a spade. Right now, we have only 1 slot in space. Fine, we've applied 4 or 5 more slots. So we are lagging behind. We lost 4 slots to other countries in the region, which were supposed to be ours. So we are lagging, but we are catching up. Yes, we are catching up. I don't want to speak more of this. I'm sorry, but we can have one-to-one conversation sometimes.
Right. So we would love to do another session with you about the Pakistan Aerospace program in particular and what the potential is. And we thank you for your time and thank you for your contributions for the nation.
Thanks a lot for triggering me and triggering an old man to come out with whatever is good for the country. Yeah, I'm looking forward to pass on all what I have learned to the young people now.
Absolutely. And so just a brief ending question. What would be, what do you think is the benefit of forums like CxO Global Forum to the public sector, to the private sector in particular?
It's a very useful thing, the private sector needs to also have its act together, I've been writing papers on that. Look at Reliance, group across the border. They're doing a $20 billion private sector project and producing Rafale in India. So we are better engineers, aeronautical engineers. We've done our aeronautical engineering since 1967, 68. We've met a lot of national challenges before, strategic challenges. Now is the time that some of us who are more than 1,000 plus, qualified from top universities of the world, let them build up a private sector, whether it's space or it's aerospace or it's defense. Let's build up a private sector in Pakistan. That is my vision of the future.
Thank you so much, Mansoor Saab. Thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. And if you want to learn more about Mansoor Saab, please log on to his LinkedIn. Otherwise, you can visit our website, cxoforum.global. We appreciate all the comments and feedback. We look forward to speaking to you next time with another very special guest. Till then, take care of yourselves and stay focused and stay together. Thank you.
Bye-bye.